Hello and welcome to Dialogue. The Israeli Ministry of Defense has confirmed it has launched multiple airstrikes on Iranian military and nuclear targets on Friday, June the 13th. Top Iranian military commanders, nuclear scientists and civilians have reportedly been killed or wounded. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio confirmed Israel had notified the U.S. prior to the attacks but acted independently without U.S. involvement. Now, what triggered the strikes on Iran? How might Iran retaliate further? And could this lead to a wide-ranging escalation of tensions in the region? Join us for our discussion today, live from Beijing. I'm Li Xin, sitting in for Xu Qingduo. Joining me today are Ali Akbar Dareini, researcher and writer at the Journal of the Center for Strategic Studies in Tehran, Iran. Dr. Sara Yael Hirschhorn, visiting professor at the University of Haifa, and Wang Jin, director of the Center for Israel Studies at Northwest University of China. The warmest welcome to all of you. Let's go straight first to China's reactions and comments, which came in the middle of the afternoon on Friday. Let's listen to the soundbite from a routine press conference by China's spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Wang Jin.
China opposes any infringement on Iran's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity, and opposes actions that escalate tensions or expand the conflict. The sudden resurgence of tensions in the region is not in anyone's interest.
Well, to understand China's position, Professor Wang Jin, let me go to you first. How would you help us understand China's position here, stressing on the respect for Iran's sovereignty, but again, calling for restraint and that hoping both sides would remain calm?
I think China's stance is very clear. On the one hand, China blames and criticizes the military activities taken by Israel against Iran. That is a very direct challenge and violation of Iran's sovereignty, and that should be opposed by in the international community, including China, of course. But on the other hand, China also calls for the peace and the pacifying emotion, as well as the very rational and restrained actions further, because we know when we are talking about sovereignty, we're talking about independence, it should be established upon the notion that the war should be prevented, the intervention and the invasion should be further prevented. If the war be escalated into the total war, nobody will benefit from that, and particularly in the Middle East, where the wars are continued, conflicts are everywhere, and the crises are still not far from being well managed. So that's why I think China's message is very clear and hopes that the region could go back to normal and could go back to stability as early as possible.
Right. These strikes have been described as unprecedented, and as we said, they were carried out early Friday morning in Tehran and other areas in Iran. 3 top military officers and 5 nuclear scientists were reportedly killed. It's also reported that civilians, including women and children, were targeted, although we do not have the casualty number as yet. Let me go to Mr. Dareini here, and what more do we know about the strikes launched by Israel? Which were the targets and why?
Top Iranian military commanders as well as nuclear scientists have been assassinated, have been killed in these attacks, as well as several military installations, missile sites, and the Natanz uranium enrichment facility. This is the information we have. We also have the aerospace commander of the guard, General Hajizadeh, is also among those killed. So 4 top military figures have been killed in these acts of aggression by Israel so far.
So the latest from Iran. Let's listen to what Netanyahu had to say in a statement early Friday morning following the strikes. Listen in to some parts of his statement.
For decades, The tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. Now just imagine 10,000 tons of TNT landing on a country the size of New Jersey. The increasing range of Iran's ballistic missiles would bring that nuclear nightmare to the cities of Europe and eventually to America. Remember, Iran calls Israel the small Satan. It calls America the great Satan.
Dr. Hirschhorn, let me go to you first. Can Israel justify itself with such statement?
Well, first, I just wanted to open my statement by saying I wish safety and, peace to my colleague in Tehran. And I think that both the people of Israel as well as the people of Iran have hopes for the future that we will live in better times. Can Israel justify its activities last night? Israel sees its strike as a operation of self-defense. It indeed has been planned maybe for almost 20 years, and according to military and political sources, which I, of course, can't verify as an independent American citizen living in Israel, they claim that the breakout time for Iran producing a nuclear weapon had narrowed very, very sharply, and that the strike needed to be carried out now, both to protect Israel's national security and territorial integrity, but as Netanyahu gestured to in his speech, a larger program of securing the West from a nuclearized Iran. Israel clearly carried out targeted assassinations, strikes against nuclear facilities and ballistic weapons depots, which seems to suggest that they had a list of what they thought was essential for the moment in preventing the so-called breakout of the Iranian nuclear weapon.
We're joined in the studio by Einar Tangen, Senior Fellow at Taihe Institute, a think tank based here in Beijing. Einar, welcome to the show. Now, Israel, as we heard, reported it had launched a preemptive strike on nuclear facilities and missile sites in Iran, although civilians were also not targeted. Can Israel use this notion of preemptive self-defense to justify its actions here?
Well, any sovereign country can say what they want, but if they are abiding by the UN, which Israel, last I checked, is part of, it is not sufficient legally. You have to have imminent danger, which means that there would have to be a nuclear bomb about to be assembled. You couldn't say that I think something could happen, therefore I will act. That is not a way of conducting the world. Otherwise, what will you have? Every single country out there will say, well, we're acting in self-defense. We're going to preemptively strike. It is against the law. It's against morality. There was active negotiations going on. The fact that they struck at this point makes them a pariah state.
Well, you mentioned there are active negotiations going on, and that's precisely what perplexes me. I don't know about other people. They have been talking to each other, but it seems that all of a sudden things turned very sour. They started to mutually accuse each other of being aggressive, of not wanting a deal, so on and so forth. Professor Wang Jin, what exactly happened? What was the trigger that led to this tension between the United States and Tehran, at least on the surface?
I think the United States and Iran, the problem between the two sides actually started to merge very quickly during the past several weeks, because we know that we are facing, we are welcoming maybe if Israel's latest attacks did not erupt, we might face the very latest or the newest sixth round of talks between Iran and United States. Although there was some kind of stalemate, but the possibilities for reaching the kind of a settlement, reaching a kind of an agreement is still very high. But the divisions, as you mentioned, still maintain. The United States want Iran's so-called enrichment go back to zero, and that has already enriched uranium should go to the hands of the United States and other Western countries. But from the perspective of Iran, they believe that they have the legal rights under the international norms. They have the legal rights to peaceful use the capabilities of nuclear. So that's why they have the different visions of whether the uranium should be transferred to the international community and how to control and monitor the uranium in the future. So that's why the division become more and more greater, and Israel's sudden attack, surprising attack against Iran actually now violated the very foundation for the future dialogue and might endanger the whole region.
Mr. Dareini in Tehran, how does Iran view the development of the situation? What does Iran make of the timing of these strikes while the US and Iran are ostensibly scheduled to continue to negotiate this coming weekend?
First of all, the Israeli attack is an act of aggression. It is a declaration of war against Iran. Israel targeted civilian areas, residential buildings, which is a gross violation of international law. It targeted a nuclear facility, all in breach of international law. But what Israel did could have not happened without the consent of the United States and without coordination with the United States, without logistical support from the United States. So Israel is actually a proxy of the US in launching such an attack against Iran. The only difference is that the United States plays the role of the good cop and warmonger Netanyahu plays the role of the bad cop. This should not be seen as a single incident. Marco Rubio's comments that this is a unilateral Israeli attack and US was not involved in this is nonsense. Nobody's going to buy that. Iran sees this as a concerted effort to intensify pressure on Iran at the negotiation table, but this is going to backfire, and Iran is going to retaliate.
Mr. Dareini, you talked about U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's statement. Let me read in greater detail the statement. Rubio said, following the strikes regarding U.S. involvement, as reported by Reuters, that tonight Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We're not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. And he added, Israel advised us that they believe this action was necessary for its self-defense. Dr. Hirschhorn, was the U.S. informed? Did the U.S. give a tacit go-ahead to Israel, or did it really not have any power over Israel?
Well, I think the statement that you just read from Secretary of State Marco Rubio provides a level of what we might call plausible deniability of the United States' role in last night's action. But certainly there seems to have been, coordination over the last several weeks over the progress of the talks, but also because U.S.-Israel coordination around Iran goes far beyond the issue only of nuclearization, also about the attacks on October 7th, the Iranian funding for and support for them, the hostage negotiations for the remaining, nearly 20 alive hostages still in Gaza that believe requires some kind of role or even deterrence of Iran to achieve other regional goals. What happened with Hezbollah and going on with Syria also all have Iranian involvement. So there's reasons for the United States to be coordinating behind the scenes with Israel, not only about the nuclear issue, but the nuclear issue being chief amongst them. Also, I would say that U.S.-Israel relationship is actually frayed over the question of Iranian nuclearization, particularly over Trump's re-engagement into a kind of deal that seemed reminiscent, at least at first, of the JCPOA under the Obama administration that would not fully deter Iran's nuclearization. And this seems to have been actually a very strong point of contention between Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump over the past several weeks. And we don't really know where that issue actually lay before last night's attack.
So are you saying, Dr. Hirschhorn, because you were talking rather fast, can you make it clear that Netanyahu was doing this to deter any kind of possible deal between Iran and the United States?
I think the scopes of the attack suggest that perhaps they are still trying to leave some kind of opening for a resumption of talks between the Trump administration and the Iranian government, with this additional layer of obviously extreme pressure that's been exerted. But as our guest from Tehran noted, I also believe that this will backfire, and Israelis are preparing for an imminent strike from Iran in retaliation. So I don't believe they're going back to the negotiating table, at least not this weekend.
Einar, the United States is the security guarantor of Israel and its closest military ally. Do you think the U.S. should be held accountable for knowing what's going to happen and not doing enough to stop Israel from doing this?
Yes, I mean, under criminal law, if I know you're going to go kill somebody and I don't do anything about it, I'm liable. That's called accessory before the fact. If I knew about it afterwards, I knew you had killed somebody, then I would be an accessory after the fact. So it's well established under criminal law that if you know and you acquiesce to it, then you are in fact liable. But one thing that we haven't talked about here is the fact that Israel is a nuclear-armed state. It's the worst kept secret in the world. In fact, it is not a secret. It's an open secret, and Israeli Defense Force, also the politicians have alluded to it. So it's not something that's hidden. So you have one nuclear force who is determined that it should be the only nuclear force in the area. It would have been much better had they not developed those nuclear weapons. But no one is saying, least of all the United States. They're claiming that Iran is in violation of the nuclear codes. All right? How about Israel? They've never joined non-proliferation.
Speaking of the scrutiny on Iran, there was this latest development on June the 12th by the International Nuclear Energy Watchdog, which is the IAEA, or the International Atomic Energy Agency. There was a resolution tabled by Western countries led by the United States, which kind of officially stated that Iran violated the International Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and according to Western media, that's the first time in 20 years. Professor Wang Jin, let me go to you first. How do you look at the timing of this resolution? China and Russia and Burkina Faso voted against it, and there were 11 other nations which abstained from it. So there was quite a divide among the 35 voting board of governors of the IAEA. But anyway, the resolution was passed. How do you look at the role of this resolution in terms of the development of the tension?
I think the resolution from the IAEA itself, I mean, if we're looking, as you mentioned, from the process of voting, actually it reflects a very clear message that there were strong divisions inside IAEA members, because some states, including China and other countries, believe that now Iran nuclear issue is very complicating, and we cannot blame that every wrong side to the Iranian side. We should take into other factors into consideration. For example, the United States withdrew from the JCPOA in 2018, and also United States and other Western countries sanctions imposed to Tehran. And all these things now together contributed to the very, very difficult and complicating scenario right now over Iran nuclear issue. But then on the other hand, if you look at who voted for this kind of the resolution, some Western countries, they believe Iran should be the only one be blamed. Iran should be the only one be criticized, and Iran should be the only one to the negative side that accepted the criticisms.
Yeah. Well,
so I don't think this is fair.
China voted against the resolution together with Russia and Burkina Faso, as I said. And Professor Wang, help us understand China's position. Is China protecting Iran? What is China's stance here regarding Iran's nuclear program?
Well, from the outcome, maybe someone will say, okay, China always protects Iran, but actually I think China is protecting, together with other countries, reality, the justice. Because as we mentioned, that when we're looking at what is happening in the Iran nuclear issue, we cannot say just Iran is the only one should be blamed. And the other side, actually a lot of other factors, for example, some factors from the Western countries, they also contributed a lot to the difficult scenario right now. So that's why when we really want to solve the problem, want to end this kind of the crisis and the stalemate, we should consider all the factors together and to find a possible resolution rather than a resolution targeting only Iran. That's not fair.
Mr. Dareini, let me go back to you in Tehran because this is directly regarding your country. How can Iran reassure the members of the international community, including China and Russia, that Iran is not producing a nuclear weapon?
Iran has received the most inspections from the IAEA in history. Iran has cooperated with the IAEA more than any other member state. Under the JCPOA, Iran allowed intrusive inspections of its nuclear facilities, even non-nuclear facilities. There is no nation on earth that has cooperated with the agency more than Iran. But the more Iran has cooperated with the agency, the more demands and questions have come from the other side. Look at what happened yesterday. The IAEA Board of Governors resolution declared Iran in violation of its NPT obligations, while Iran has not violated the NPT. To declare Iran in violation of the NPT, IAEA inspectors, not Mossad agents, IAEA inspectors need to collect information and evidence and prove that Iran has diverted fissile nuclear material to military use. Have IAEA inspectors discovered that Iran has weaponized its nuclear program? No, there is no evidence. Even the IAEA doesn't claim that there is any evidence. So the resolution is based on Gross's report, and Gross's report originates from Mossad reports. And this begs the question, is Mossad Gross's employer? So this is a politically motivated resolution. Iran has cooperated more than any other nation. There is no evidence to prove that Iran has weaponized its program.
Dr. Hirschhorn, from your perspective as an observant in the region, how do you look at the timing? It seems that this resolution was tabled just at the right moment when things were heating up. Is it a coincidence? What is happening here?
Well, look, first of all, I'd like to say that this assertion that, the Mossad is essentially directing the United Nations, sounds to me like, Jewish conspiratorial thinking about control of the world. I don't agree with that way of thinking about things, and I don't know that there was some kind of odd coincidence of timing. There is a fundamental question here. Iran would like to nuclearize. I don't think it actually hides those aspirations. And many other countries, not only Israel, but Western powers, other regional powers in the Middle East, including Saudi Arabia, do not want Iran to weaponize. And there's been long-standing suspicions for 20 years or more that Iran is essentially cheating on deals that it has entered into regarding the use of nuclear material. I think we're at a fundamental crossroads here because, there's one narrative that says what Israel did was an act not only of self-defense, but also to prevent nuclear breakout that would threaten the West. And Iran has certainly made, alarming statements to that regard, not only about wishing to destroy Israel, but also largely a campaign against Western powers, including the United States. And a second narrative, which is supported by many countries, that Iran has the right to nuclearize, or if it doesn't, for peaceful purposes, and that it should be allowed to continue in that path, and that's what it's doing, and that there's some kind of overreach by the United Nations and the IAEA to continue to question Iran's actions. So I think we're kind of at an impasse here, and Israel decided, I think, to put its hand on the scale and intervene in this debate last night.
Yeah, for time's sake, Dr. Dareini, I'm going to give you the opportunity to respond.
Look, what the United States is doing now suggests that the United States has reversed to Pompeo and John Bolton war agenda, and it is the Israel's agenda of provoking wars in the Middle East. When the talks started in April, the US position was no weaponization, and this created hopes that there is going to be a deal. this deal could have been achieved quickly because Iran was open to that. Iran agrees to limitations on its nuclear program, you lift the sanctions, you have the deal. But later, the Americans changed their position from no weaponization to zero enrichment. It's very obvious that zero enrichment is an invitation to capitulation.
Right.
Iran is not going to capitulate.
Okay.
So this is.
I understand. Einar, you obviously have something burning to say. What is your point to make?
Well, I mean, this was carefully planned. To know exactly where the people you want to kill when they're individuals, you have to follow them for weeks. You have to know exactly where they're going to be when you make your attack. It takes a lot of planning. The fact, I do not believe that it's a coincidence that they put the motion on before. This was a weak justification and very clearly planned. But what you have here, and the reason I was shaking my head is our panelist from Israel is talking about moral high ground and the right to self-defense. How does that apply to the Palestinians and what is going on there? I mean, it's unbelievable to me that there is going to be any defense of what is a rogue nation, two of them, the United States and Israel, perpetuating crimes against humanity. And I'm not saying that Iran is innocent here. Iran has its own agenda. They have not always been very cooperative, and it takes two to dance. But this idea that somehow you can defend somebody who's unilaterally flaunting the rules of law and humanity is disgusting.
Dr. Hirschhorn, your time. 1 minute, please.
Well, look, first, I don't think we have time to get into the Palestinian issue here, but frankly, it's a question of, do you think Israel has a right to self-defense? I spent last night in a bomb shelter. If this is a credible threat, and it's also very obvious that Iran will likely retaliate, what is the value of my life and the life of my neighbors and friends and family here? I think Israel has the right to defend itself like any other nation. The question that we have at play in this discussion was how close were we last night to a nuclear breakout and to Iran's stated intention to use those nuclear weapons against the state of Israel? I, as an individual American citizen here, without privy to the kind of intelligence that the leadership of the state of Israel has, can't answer that question.
Dr. Hirschhorn, what
I have
about
to live with the consequences of that in my own life. Yeah. So I reject those assertions.
All right. Well, Dr. Dareini, very quickly, 30 seconds, please.
Israel possesses nuclear weapons. Israel's weapons of mass destruction is a threat to humanity, and Israel has shown that it knows no red lines. It engages in genocide, and look at what has happened just in the last few hours. Iran's peaceful nuclear program has not been a threat to anybody because Iran has never weaponized its program. But it is Israel's weapons of mass destruction that is being used everywhere against Palestinians and others.
Okay, we have to leave it there. Before we go, Professor Wang Jin, what can China propose at this moment? 20 seconds, please.
I think China and the international community should do more. On the one hand, to establish the communication channel between the conflicting sides as early as possible, because there are no direct communication channel right now. And then on the other hand, to enhance the voices and circumstances for peace, for pacifying the tension here, because this is highly and urgently needed right now.
All right, we have to leave it there. Hopefully things will stabilize. Many thanks to Einar Tangen, Dr. Sara Yael Hirschhorn, Ali Akbar Dareini, and Wang Jin joining us from different parts of the world. And with that, we conclude this special edition of Dialogue with Miliushin, sitting in for Xu Qingduo. Thank you very much for having followed us.